Welcome to this video on the different types of interfacing and their uses. Interfacing can be used for different kinds of things. It normally gives weight to the fabric. In this video, I'll be talking about what interfacing is, the different types of interfacing, and how and when to use them. There are three different types of interfacing, and this includes number one, the woven interfacing. The woven interfacing, we have the non-woven interfacing, and of course we have the knit interfacing. The woven interfacing, as you can see, has what is called grain lines, as you can see it on these pictures. That means that when you are cutting this particular woven interface, you need to follow the grain lines, just like when cutting a fabric. You also need to pre-shrink. That is a disadvantage of the woven interface. It is always good to pre-shrink it before you use it. And most times it tends to fray at the edges. Apart from that, this is quite good because it maintains the drape of a fabric that you are working on. And it's also very, very, very durable. So that's all it is about the woven interface. Just know that it has grain lines, and you have to follow the grain lines when you're cutting it for your sewing projects. For the non-woven interface, as you can see the difference, this does not have any grain line at all. It doesn't have any kind of grain line. It is made up of fibers that are woven together. Compared with the woven one, as we saw earlier, there is absolutely no grain line to follow. So you can cut it anyhow and then put it and use it for your fabric or any kind of sewing project that you are doing. Now the last one, the third one, is the knit interface. The knit interface mostly used for knit fabric and any other fabric that stretches. The knit interface stretches, and what you should observe is that it can stretch in just one direction. It can stretch in this direction or it can stretch in this direction. So when you are using knit interface, always place it according to the direction of stretch of your fabric. Some fabrics also stretch in just one direction. So you need to make sure that when you are using this, understand the direction of stretch. So that is the only thing you need to know when you're using knit fabric. So now that we've known the three kinds of interface, it is also good to know that we have the interfaces that you sew in and the interfaces that you fuse in or iron on. Sewing interfaces are interfaces that have the same side. That is, both sides are the same. You can place either side on your fabric. That is because it does not have those tiny bulbs that is activated to gum on fabric when you are ready to use it. So this is a typical sewing interface, a lightweight one, and this is another sewing interface, a medium weight one. So you could also have a heavyweight sewing interface. So it's good to know that you can have lightweight, medium weight, heavyweight sewing interface. Just like you can have lightweight, medium weight, heavyweight, iron-on interface or fusible interface. And all of them depend on whatever project that you are making. For instance, if you are working on a very light, perhaps silk material that cannot stand ironing, you use a lightweight sewing. Or you are working on a material and you want it to have more shape or more, you want it to be more defined. But that same material might not still be good for you to iron on. You use this sewing interface for such a project. This here is the fusible interface or the iron-on interface. You can have a woven iron-on interface or a non-woven iron-on interface. So that is all there is to it about interfacing. Don't let it ever confuse you, especially if you're new to sewing. When I started sewing, really, it used to confuse me. When people are talking about fusible, non-fusible, woven or non-woven or knits and all that. So this is a real simple summary that will just guide you through. So it depends on your project. If you're using a lighter fabric, you use a lighter interface. And it also depends on your project. If you're doing something like handbags, or you're doing something like purses and all that, of course you use a heavyweight interface. That I'm going to discuss subsequently. Interfacing that we use for sewing projects can actually come in different weights. As you can see them all here, this is the lightweight interfacing. Just looking at it, you see that it is lightweight, very light. And these ones you can use for simple projects like sewing your dresses or even making suits. For instance, I have a suit here that I made. This suit here that I made, I used the lightweight interfacing on the body of the suit. I lined this material, this particular one, with the lightweight interfacing. And I use the medium interfacing on the lapel. So I just wanted to illustrate how you can use the lightweight interfacing. So as I was saying, you have the lightweight interfacing, like this too. It's lightweight. This is a medium weight interfacing. See, it's a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier than these two. So there's a difference between the two. And this here is the heavyweight interfacing. If you look at it, you know that the thickness is different from this one. So this is the heavyweight. This is also heavyweight interfacing. So it depends on what project you want to do. For instance, I use this heavyweight interfacing together with the lightweight if I'm making some African tops that I need to emphasize the bust. You can use the two. This particular one, that the thickness, if you can see, the thickness is different between these two. I normally use this one when I'm making handbags, when I'm using Ankara material to do handbags, just to give it a little more body to the handbag. So these are the different weights of interfacing that we can use for our sewing projects. So next we are going to actually see practically how to use sew-in interfacing and iron-on interfacing. Using the sew-in interfacing is quite easy because with the sew-in interfacing, both sides are the same. There's no side that is gummy, it's just the same. And most times if you want to use a sew-in interfacing, you cut the interfacing the same size with your sewing material. Whatever project you're making, you make it the same size because you're going to be sewing it onto the material to make them become one for you to use and do whatever you want to do. So the most important thing is to ensure that you sew it along the seam allowance that you've already created for your project. So once you've cut your sewing interfacing and you've cut your material, your project, your patterns, and you've cut all the interfacing that you want to use according to the pieces you want to use. So all you have to do is to take it to the machine and do a basting stitch. So let's go to our machine and do a basting stitch. Ensure that when you want to do your stitch that you've set your machine to the longest millimeter. So I've placed my sewing length to 4 millimeters on my heavy duty Singer sewing machine. And then I'm going to use that to run the basting stitch all around. As I said, always run it on your seam allowance. When you're cutting your pattern, definitely you have your seam allowance. So you run your basting stitch on the seam allowance. This is just to hold the sewing interfacing to your material. So as you can see, I've run the stitch around it just to make the interfacing the same with your sewing project. That's all there is to sewing interfacing. It's quite easy to use. There's no ironing involved. You ensure that the interfacing is the same level with your sewing project. So now let's look at how we can use iron-on interfacing, or what we call the fusible interfacing. This is the iron-on interfacing. As you can see, there's a difference between the back and the front. The front has these little bubbles, so that once you apply heat on it, it gums to the material. So you need to be careful which side you place on your material. So ensure that this bubbly side, this side that has to do with the gumming, is placed on the material that you want to fuse. And you see the difference between this one and the sewing. With this one, it is not important that you cut it the same size with your material. You don't need it. This one you need to just place it. You can make it a little bit less than your material, especially if you have your seam allowance that you want to sew. So once you've placed your interface on your material, what you need to do now is to get your ironing board and then place it on your board, and then get another material on top of it, like so. You can decide to spray water on this to make it gum very well, or you could decide to use a steam iron. If you don't have a steam iron, spray water and then you place your iron on it. But I'm going to be using my steam iron, and I've set it almost to the little bit towards the highest, because I want it to be quite hot. And then I will place it. You place it for some maybe 5 to 7 seconds in one spot, and then you lift it up and place it in another spot. Don't iron it like that, because it will bring in folds. Just place it down, lift it up, place it again. So that's the best method to do it. Once you've done it, you can check whether it is well gummed. If it is not well gummed, you keep repeating the same process until it is well attached to your sewing material. That is it. As you can see, everything is gummed together very well. There are no wrinkles, nothing. So that's the best way to attach your iron-on interfacing on your sewing project. It's quite easy to do. There's no big process attached to it. So thank you for watching to the end. I hope you've learned 1 or 2 things about the different kinds of interfacing, what you can use them for, and how you can use them properly. So I hope there will be no more confusion. about interfacing, especially if you're just beginning to learn how to sew. If you have any questions, drop your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscription button so that I can be able to upload more videos like this for you and give you more tips, especially if you're learning how to sew. Thanks for watching, and till next time in my next video. Ciao!